So I'm just going to share the screen now. So hi and welcome to today's webinar on engaging children and with mental well-being. So today this is a 1-hour session and it's targeted at parents and teachers of children of all ages. And because this is a webinar, I'll be doing most of the talking, but I do encourage you to ask questions and provide feedback where appropriate to keep this as interactive as possible. So we'll have a few minutes towards the end for questions and answers. So meanwhile, I'll be using Slido throughout the webinar to try and keep it a little bit interactive and to answer any questions you may have. And if I miss any questions today, you're welcome to email me and I'll get back to you as soon as possible with the response. And if anyone would like a PDF copy of today's webinar, please email me with your request. So who am I? So I'm Marnie Merrilees. I'm a psychologist. I specialise in supporting high performance in sport, business and other domains. I'm near completion of a professional doctorate in sport and exercise psychology, and I'm registered with the British Psychological Society and a mental health counsellor. So I've got 8 years experience of lecturing at the University of Sunderland and a robust background in NHS settings, including child and adolescent mental health services. And I bring a rich understanding of psychological principles to my practice from my experience as well. So I'm a single parent, but my son is not so little now. He's 30 years old. So I brought him up on my own from when he was 6 months old. And as you can imagine, that brought with it its own set of trials and tribulations. And I'm proud to say I'm proud of the man he's become today. So by the end of today's webinar, you should be able to understand why engaging children with mental well-being is so important, know the contributing factors to children's mental well-being, and know how to engage children in mental well-being, and know what to do if a safeguarding issue arises. So let's start by brainstorming what are the symptoms of emotional distress in children. Now you should be able to see a QR code. If you can scan that with your mobile phone, you will be able to answer and your answer will come up on the screen. So just what are the symptoms of emotional distress in children? So if you just scan the QR code that you can see on the screen, and then it'll take you to the link in your phone. And then you could put an answer in, because we'll be using this as we go through. So let's just check it's working. Any issues, feel free to unmute yourself and let me know. I'm just going to admit someone else to the meeting. I'm just going to check that everybody. Oh, yes, we've got a reply. Thank you. So as you can see, some people, we're busy, for those of you that's just joined, we're busy brainstorming what are the symptoms of emotional distress in children. And I've asked everyone to scan the QR code with their phone and then they can input the answer on the phone. So as you can see, oh, someone else has entered. As you can see, some of the responses are withdrawal, quiet, not making, or withdrawn from relationships with peers or adults. Change to presentation, becomes withdrawn when usually outgoing. So I'm glad that function works, so we can go forward. So as a few of you have mentioned, symptoms of emotional distress in children are, for example, anxiety, so whereby the distress is internalized. This is more common in females. The most common symptom of anxiety are, for example, racing heart rate, sweaty palms, butterflies in the stomach, racing thoughts, so your head can feel like it's a bit of a washing machine, nausea, and using the loo more. Depression is also another one. The most common symptom of depression are, for example, low mood, lack of motivation, poor sleep, poor eating habits, lack of self-care, no longer finds pleasure in activities previously enjoyed, and may therefore close themselves off to social interactions. I've just noticed I've got a message in the chat. 2 seconds. Oh, it's not, the Slido isn't working correctly for some an attendee. So then poor sleep. This can be that it's difficult to get to sleep, or that sleep is broken, or early morning waking is a common symptom as well. Physical symptoms can include, for example, an upset tummy, nausea, headache. Changes in weight, are generally feeling unwell. Unexplained crying also in children. Anger as well, whereby the distress is acted out. This is more common in males, where girls tend to internalize and feel more anxious because they take all their distress inwardly and sort of mask it, and so then they feel anxious. Whereas boys, it's often emotional distress is often expressed as anger. They'll act out, and that's when you'll see people getting into trouble more. Maybe it's bullying and all these sorts of things. Eating disorders and self-harm. So if you're concerned about your child's behaviour, your first point of contact is your GP. And if you have concerns or have identified your child to be at risk of self-harm or suicide, it is strongly advisable that you seek professional help. The type of help depends on the circumstances at the time. Please remember, if you find your child to be in immediate risk of harm, you have the option to call 999 or take your child to A&E for more direct support. So as well as being aware of self-harm behaviours in children and young people, it's also important to be aware of safeguarding issues. So safeguarding issues are suspected abuse, bullying, sexual exploitation, radicalisation, and grooming. So the 5 most common types of abuse are physical, emotional, neglect, sexual, and bullying. So if you suspect any of these safeguarding concerns, your point of contact is your local safeguarding team. So I'm going to try Slido again, and hopefully it'll work for those that it didn't. And apologies if it doesn't. So let's brainstorm what we understand by children's mental well-being. So again, scan the QR code with your phone, and then you'll be able to give your response. So what does mental well-being look like? What does a child that has good mental well-being present with? Happy and bright?
Tamam.
Resilience? Understanding of own emotions? Okay, so I think that's I think you've all inputted there. So things like being happy, like you said, enjoys activities, is motivated to do things, feels confident, um, has clean hair, teeth, nails, clean clothes, so they take care of their appearance, stable friendship groups, having a close friend, good relationships with teachers and or parents, a healthy lifestyle choices also. I'm just going to admit somebody. So let's look at lifestyle factors. So a holistic approach is needed as the child is not just someone's son or daughter. They're a student, they're a friend, they may be an athlete or a creative. They have many hats that they wear on a daily basis. Also, there are several lifestyle factors that influence a child's mental health and well-being on a daily basis. So, for example, a healthy diet with regular meals is important to get the correct nutrition needed for the developing brain and body. Many people find the quality of sleep and mood improves with a healthy diet. Hydration. As you can all see, I'm drinking. I drink a lot of water. Hydration is so important for concentration and injury prevention, as we are made of approximately 70% water. When we are hydrated, our pee is clear, not coloured. When it is the colour of straw, it's a clear indicator of dehydration. So we need to be drinking around, as adults, 2 litres of water at least per day. But children will drink less. But it's all good. A good tip is to have like a bottle and keep it there for the child to drink throughout the day. And by the end of the day, it should be empty. That's a good gauge of how much child is drinking if they're suffering from dehydration. Or it's a good thing to do. It helps prevent injuries. It helps your brain, so it helps them think more clearly. And then sleep and good sleep hygiene improves to improve the quality of sleep. A good routine is important. So if you all remember when you're dealing with babies, to have like a routine before you go to bed. So maybe they might have the bottle, have a bath, and then have a cuddle, and then lay them down to bed with whatever routine you've got. You might read a story. You might put some like gentle music on in the background. So that's a routine, and that is something that children benefit from, like going to bed at the same time. Maybe he's eating the last evening meal at least 3 hours before they go to bed. And a really important one, and I know it's a really difficult one in this day and age, is screen time. So try not to have screen time an hour at least before going to sleep, because it affects with their deep sleep, which helps your recovery. Alcohol, drugs, smoking all have a negative impact on mood, sleep, dietary habits, and hydration. Psychological factors such as confidence, mental toughness, and concentration. And then psychosocial factors such as the quality of relationship with primary caregivers, teachers, peers, and coaches. I touched on screen time, but like again, in terms of TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, everything is okay, but in moderation. So in order for a child to grow into a well-rounded, healthy individual, balance is key. So let's look at the psychosocial factors which influence children's mental well-being, which are also indicators of emotional distress, and include the quality and quantity of friendships, as well as the stability of friendship groups. For example, does the child have a consistent friendship group? Because that is indicative of an emotional well-being. Or are they frequently changing friends or lack friends? So that can be an indicator of emotional distress. The quality of relationships with primary caregivers and the quality of relationships with teachers. If good, all of this can facilitate mental well-being in children. However, if the quality of these relationships is poor or lacking, this can cause great emotional distress in children and young people. Some of the psychological factors include helping children identify and cope with a range of emotions, relaxation and stress management skills, both of which we'll discuss a little bit in more detail as we go. Cognitive coping and processing are enhanced by giving examples of the relationship among thoughts. So what is the child thinking? Feeling, what is the child feeling? And behaviors, and why are they behaving in the way they're behaving? So this helps children and parents modify inaccurate and unhelpful thoughts. And it is essentially the basis of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Encouraging a positive can-do attitude also is important, rather than imposing self-limiting beliefs onto the children, because the world is their oyster and they can go out and get it if they want. So for an example, Cristiano Ronaldo said, "There is no harm in dreaming of becoming the world's best player. It's all about trying to be the best. I will keep working hard to achieve it, but it is within my capabilities." So there is an example where he wanted to pursue his dreams, pursue his goals, and he kept working hard to achieve it. Rather than people saying, no, you're not going to be a professional footballer, don't be so silly. And often people say things like that to people to protect them from getting their hopes and dreams up. But within a realistic expectation, like Ronaldo said, it's within his capabilities. That's what he wanted to do. In narration or storytelling, in which children describe their personal experience. So emotional intelligence is the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's own emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. When the child asks, "What's wrong, mummy, daddy, gran," for etc., when you're feeling angry, or you're sad, or you're upset, because we're all human, we all have emotions, the ups and downs of life. It's the reality. Just be honest. Tell the child how you're feeling, but in an age appropriate way. And this is very important. It might sound simple and it's often overlooked, but it is very important, because children learned to put names onto emotions they experience in this way. And rather than protecting, which is what we as parents tend to want to do, rather this denies the child their true lived experience. As a result, creates doubt, confusion, and anxiety within the child, as they have like an intuitive sense that something's wrong. But when you're saying everything, "Oh no, everything's fine, everything's okay, don't worry about it," and they can clearly see you sat there crying, or you've been shouting at somebody on the phone, or for example, just be honest and say, "Oh, mummy's upset, or daddy's upset," or however, whatever the situation. Just, you don't have to go into detail. It's about being honest and true to the way you're feeling, because the child can intuitively pick that up. And if you're saying everything's fine, it sends the confusion. So this also erodes trust in what you're saying, and therefore in you. So from the child's perspective, so which then creates problems itself further down the line, because trust is a really important within any relationship. Allow children to experience and express their own emotions, rather than deny them their own lived reality. So make time to talk and listen rather than saying, I'm too busy or not now, which obviously is really difficult. Everyone's really busy. Everyone's got stuff to do, but it's really important to, if you can't do it right there and then, say, we can talk in, I don't know, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour. When you finish work, we'll sit down and chat, but make sure you find that time as he had promised to do so the child feels seen and heard. That's the key here. The child needs to feel seen and heard. So talk to children about different emotions during day-to-day interactions. For example, when going for walks is a great one. It's when people are walking, they tend to just talk and they're not really thinking. There's no pressure. They just talk away, and that's a good time to start just casually asking about how they're feeling, what have they been doing. Also, watching movies is a good way to talk about emotions, different emotions. Reading books, making talking about children's feelings a regular thing, so then it doesn't become the elephant in the room. So good communication skills facilitate human connection. For example, active listening, so nodding your head and saying yes, yes, rather than looking at your mobile phone. So that nodding your head, saying yes, open body language conveys to the child that you are listening and understanding what they are saying. My son used to come home from school and regularly have me listen to a load of gobbledygook. So basically a load of nonsense, which he'd created. So he'd tell me a story for about 15 minutes. And once I realized this was becoming a regular pattern, I still sat there and listened attentively to him for 15 minutes, and nod my head and say yes. And sometimes I did actually think what he was telling had happened, but at the end he'd often say, I'm only kidding, and start laughing. But I was giving him the time and one-on-one attention he needed. And obviously for me, sometimes I was like, I'm in a hurry, I'm a single mum, working, studying. It wasn't easy, but it's really important. So the child, again, feels heard and seen. Eye contact. Oh, someone's unmuted. Eye contact, so not direct, or you're not going to stare at the child like that when you're sort of trying to have an open conversation with them, because that's quite intense and intimidating. Occasionally sort of just like look up, just like how you would have a normal conversation, just to open questions. What are open questions? Open questions are things such as why. So it's important not to ask leading questions, especially if there's a safeguarding issue. A really easy one, like I've said, is why. Why? Children say why all the time. So you can say it back too. So can you describe that to me? Tell me more, explain. Rather than, this happened, didn't it? Because if you're putting your words into their mouth, you run the risk of the child then taking that on board into their own story. So children have fantastic imaginations and may add whatever you've said, especially if there's a safeguarding issue. So you need to be really careful. Trust is a really important one. A safe place. A good way to build trust and a safe place for children to feel safe to come to talk to you is consistency. So consistency is the key. So the child feels you're a safe and responsible adult. So stable. So whatever the child comes to you with, they know you are emotionally safe. So you're not going to be sort of up there 1 minute, down there the next minute. You are consistent and reliable and thus trustworthy. So that also means that your actions are consistent with your words. So you don't say one thing and then do another, as this creates confusion. Like I mentioned before, if you're going to tell the child, when I finish work, we'll sit and have a chat, that's exactly what you do, because it shows that you're being consistent and you're being true to your word. And then that helps the child feel that you're trustworthy. So then that helps them feel they have a safe space to go to talk to you. So in order to create consistency, this is where boundaries and rules come in. So boundaries and rules are really important for children, because as much as they don't like boundaries and rules and they try and push them and push the boundaries and break the rules, this is where they're finding who they are. They're finding their feet, finding what it feels like to break a boundary, what it feels like to break a rule. What are the consequences? And where is their safe place within the boundary and the rules of consistency? Non-judgmental. So people often mention non-judgmental, but what does it actually mean? It's about sitting and listening, using all these examples of good communication rather than judging or telling them off or shouting at them or telling them what they should or shouldn't have done. Because if you do that, then they're not going to come back again in the future and have a conversation for fear of being judged. Non-authoritarian. This links to what I said about not telling them off, shouting at them for things that they've done wrong, mistakes, because that's how we learn. We all learn by mistakes. So allow them to make their own mistakes and grow. Allowing the child to tell their story, to be seen and heard. Good communication is characterized by parents who ask questions, such as why, also share information, such as I'm feeling upset because I had an argument with my friend, for example. Sharing stories, sharing feelings. So that argument made me feel upset, sad. Accept feedback and encourage, praise, and instruct children clearly and confidently. The key here is to allow the child to tell their story so that they feel seen and heard. Not like in the olden days when it was children should be seen and not heard, as this is damaging emotionally and can end up as an adult who loses touch with their own emotions. Because as a child, their own needs, wants, and desires were not met. There becomes a disconnect between mind, body, and soul. So the amount of clients I work with that feel disconnected from the thoughts and the feelings, or they feel like, especially in terms of adults, they've come to a point in their life and they feeling not happy, discontent. It's trying to figure out why, but then they're so disconnected from how they feel and what they want in terms of mind, body, and soul. They need to develop awareness, self-awareness of what their needs, wants, and desires actually are. But this often comes down to not feeling heard and seen, and not have when they were younger, or people pleasing, for example. And it's about helping them develop self-awareness and get the reconnect between mind, body, and soul, so then someone can then decide what it is they want to do, what are their needs, what are the desires, what are the wants that make them happy in their life. So resilience or mental toughness, seems to be a lot of talk about mental toughness and resilience all around social media. it's more widely it's more widely known, and it comes from many areas of your life, for example. So life experiences and learning from your own mistakes, and that's a key as well, learning from your own mistakes. So as a child, if you're sort of overprotective, over controlled, you have little opportunity to learn from your own mistakes, so then may lack mental toughness. But a good way to help build resilience is by building and protecting confidence. So help to build a child's confidence and protect that confidence by helping them to realize their strengths and achievements, what their qualities are, and characteristics. So essentially, what does the child bring to the table? Who are they? So it helps helps the child to develop self-awareness of who they are and what they bring, which also protects their confidence. So within a lot of my work, I'm often saying controlling the controllables. So what does that mean? So there's a famous quote by Ed Moses, who was a US athlete. So he said, "Ain't no use worrying about things beyond your control. Because if they are beyond your control, ain't no use worrying. Ain't no use worrying about things within your control, because if you get them under your control, they ain't no use worrying." Sounds simple, but like that, doesn't it? So many people worry about things outside of the control. It's wasted energy and mental effort to worry about things outside of your control. Instead, help the child to focus on what they can control. So, for example, things like getting their school bag ready, so being prepared in the morning, making healthy eating choices at school, getting to school on time, handing their homework in on time, or preparing and revising for exams. These are all things that are under the child's control. So rather than worrying about how well they'll do in their homework, or how well they will do in their exams, like worrying, will they pass? If child needs to realize that if they control the process, so basically what needs to be done in order to be successful, the outcome will take care of itself. So the outcome is, how did I do on my homework? How did I do my exams? Did I show up at school on time? So coping with others' expectations. Does the child live up to other people's high expectations? So, for example, parents can unintentionally put high expectations on children to do well in school, in sport, and such like. And there's a child that can really feel the pressure from this. And then as they grow into adults, they internalize this pressure, and the voice of the adult then becomes the child's voice. So they carry it with them. It's just something to be mindful of. Encourage children to talk to you regarding pressures they may face. All they can give is 100% effort, and you should treat the child the same whether they succeed or fail. No special rewards for succeeding, because success in itself should be its own reward, and no punishment or shouting for failing. And coping with failure, often I call it the iceberg effect. So Michael Jordan said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." So the reason why Michael Jordan was a success is because every time he failed, he dusted himself off and he picked himself back up, and he focused on what needed to be done to become successful. So he put the daily grind in, and then the outcome, as I mentioned before, took care of itself. So with social media and Instagram and the like, we all see everybody's best bits. So everybody's successes. So everything that they're doing well. But what they don't see and what children need to be reminded of is it's like an iceberg effect. So if you imagine an iceberg floating, so it's 1/3 above the water and 2/3 below it. So what you see on social media is you see the actual iceberg, which is the success or the failure. But what you're not seeing is what under the surface of the water, the 2/3 of the iceberg. So that's all the hard work, determination, sacrifices, commitment, the grit, the blood, sweat, and tears that goes on below the iceberg. So the daily grind, the constant showing up all the time, and the consistent effort that people make to be successful. It doesn't just happen like that. It's important that people and children realize that failure doesn't mean that you are a failure. It means that you get back up and you try again. Because everyone in life fails. The difference between the people who succeed and the people who fail, or the people who succeed, like Michael Jordan said, they keep getting back up and going forward. So, when it comes to engaging children with mental health and well-being, as parents, caregivers, teachers, and the like, it's very important that we take care of ourselves, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So let's just take a couple of minutes to brainstorm what we understand by self-care as an adult. So again, if you can scan the QR code with your phone and then text what you understand by self-care as an adult. Yeah, so a lot of you, well, as you can see, having healthy relationships, having quiet time, spa, I like the spa, um, talking, not really see, sort of went a bit funny, hasn't it? Walks with the dog, I think that says, having a nap, having healthy relationships, yeah, definitely. Sports, yes, that's a good one. Sport and exercise, most definitely. Even for people, for yourselves as adults, for children, if you're not sporty, it can be very difficult to participate within sport and or exercise. But going for a walk in the countryside and things like that is so grounding and so therapeutic for people. And it's good to take the children too, if you can. Puzzles, yeah, so it's a distraction. It's something to just take your mind off whatever. If your mind's really busy, like I said earlier, like a washing machine, a puzzle can just help you switch off from that. Thank you for your input. So we've just had a little look at what is self-care. So you came up with some good answers there. And like I said, often people forget to practice self-care, or say if it really everyone says don't have time, don't have time. Literally, as adults, we constantly put our needs bottom of the pile. So everyone else comes first, the animals, the children, work, friends. But you need to really make time for yourself, because like I said, you can't pour from an empty cup. You are priority. So children learn behaviors by observing others. So if they grow up in an environment where the adult caretaker is practicing self-care and self-love, so doing all the things that you put in on Slido, The child is more likely to grow up with these skills and then take them into adulthood. So making yourself a priority is not selfish. There's something about society that tells people if they're doing things for themselves or they're looking after themselves or they're making themselves a priority, that they're selfish. It's not true. That's a myth. Your needs, wants, and desires are important too. So if you don't fuel a car engine, it won't work. You're the same. You need to allow yourself to do the things you enjoy too. That way you have something left to give others. Otherwise, you run the risk of feeling depleted, frustrated, lacking in energy and motivation, and resentful of those around you. You may be suffering from anxiety and or depression yourself. One analogy that I find useful when explaining self-care to clients is to use the oxygen mask analogy. So when you travel on an aeroplane, if there's an incident of low cabin pressure, the flight attendant will instruct you to pull down your own oxygen mask and put it on yourself before you try and help others fit their mask. Now, the reason for this is if you try and help someone else get their mask on before you put yours on, there's a very strong possibility that you could both pass out from lack of oxygen. If, however, you put your mask on first, then you're more able to focus on helping others around you. So similarly, we all have oxygen masks in our own life. Our oxygen masks are our energy, our time, and resources. If we fill our own tank up first, so we feel nice and full, satisfied, happy, our needs, wants, and desires have been met, we then have the ability to use our reserves to help other people. If we take care of ourselves, by making sure we're doing all the things that we like, such as eating well, sleeping well, exercising well, we have more energy. We will have enough energy left over to give to other people. Enough physical energy, but also enough mental energy. So the things that you all put in on Slido before, such as going for a walk, doing puzzles, having a nap, that's all sort of downtime from the chaos of busy life. So if we take care of ourselves by crafting it into our days in such a way that we are not overscheduled, we will have pockets of time available for other people. If we take care to only decide to say yes, this is important, to the things we really want to do and can safely fit into our lives, we are using our resources wisely and we will have enough time to spare for others. And by doing that, you're also setting your own personal boundaries. And then children learn from watching yourself do that also. So if you try and take care of others' needs before your own, you may find that you don't have enough in your tank to give others. You may deplete your tank by tending to others' needs first, and then in the end, you're not going to be able to take care of yourself or the other person. So self-care is all about taking care of yourself first. It doesn't mean that you don't care about others. Quite the contrary. By making the effort to take care of yourself first, you are ensuring you are there and able to take care of others. And just a point to remember, everyone feels low at some point in their lives. And if you're struggling to cope, it may be difficult to see beyond the current situation. But talking about how you're feeling can really help put things in perspective and help you feel more positive about your future. So kind of everything that we've talked about today brings us back to rules, boundaries, and consistency and how important they are. The rules are important with children because, as I said before, they help a child know where they stand. They help a child know what is expected and what behaviours are acceptable and not acceptable, because how else would the child know? Boundaries are the same. This promotes feelings of safety and security. If a child knows where the line is, where the boundary is, they know if they want to cross it or not. Again, consistency is key with rules and boundaries. It's no good saying to the child one day that you must take your shoes off if you're going to go up the stairs. But then the next day you walk up the stairs with your shoes on, the child sees you, because that's not really fair, is it? And it's not consistent. So it may bring a little bit of resentment from the child. And the child may ignore you next time you ask them not to take the shoes up when you go up the stairs. No, they'll just laugh because you went up yesterday with your shoes on. So you've got to be fair. It's also important to teach a child physical and psychological boundaries. We often hear about safe touch. And what is safe touch? Safe touch is a physical boundary. So knowing what is inappropriate to touch a child where its underwear is, for example. So if a child knows that, then they are protected more and more safe by having that boundary. They know that's inappropriate touch. Psychological boundaries also, it's all right for a child to say, yes, I want to do that, or no, I don't want to do that. Often as adults, they feel like a child's sort of yes and no isn't really relevant, and they can, not meaning any harm by it, sort of override or ride roughshod over the child, saying yes or no. But it is really important to listen because that gives the child a voice. To psychological boundary. Again, likewise, if someone invades the child's physical space boundary, they can say, I'm not comfortable with you being so close, like go away. Like, oh, often adults will want to give a child a cuddle, and sometimes the child isn't in the mood for a cuddle. So respect that the child doesn't want a cuddle. Don't force a cuddle on the child, or don't force a kiss on the child. Respect the child's boundaries. All these things help keep the child safe. And remember, consistency is key. So don't give in to pester power. You're the adult. The child will test boundaries to see if you're trustworthy. Do you mean what you say? Are you a safe adult to open up to? For example, in the supermarket with my son when he was a toddler, I'm sure you've all been there. He wanted a lolly and decided to throw a tantrum up one of the aisles and threw himself on the floor, arms and legs kicking and screaming. I continued shopping. I ignored what he was doing. And as soon as I left the aisle, picked himself up and came running after me. The tantrum was over. I didn't give in to him. The more you give in, the more you don't give in, the less they will pester you. Because they're quite clever. They're looking for that one chink, that one day that you give in to the pester power when you're feeling tired or you're really busy or you've had a horrendous time. But when you do, you set yourself up again for more pester power because they're hoping to catch you off guard, to catch you on this down day when you're going to give in so they can have their lolly. So you make it so much easier for yourself if you are consistent in the messages that you give. So if you don't want the child to have a lolly, also tell them before you go in the store, you're not having a lolly. We aren't buying sweets today. And they know there's nothing they can do like throwing themselves on the floor. That's going to make you change your mind. So a lot of parents feel under pressure in situations like this because they're worried about what other people think. Like the child throwing a tantrum on the floor. I've had it myself. People look and throw judgment and opinion. But lots of children throw themselves on the floor in a tantrum. It's part of growing up. So don't be worried about what other people think of you sticking to your boundaries. And again, likewise, with consistency, again, rules and boundaries. iPads and iPhones. Screen time. It's like a big thing right now. Social media, Instagram, TikTok, so difficult for parents to have any sort of control over that environment because it's it's on screen. So balance is the key here. It's about you decide, have a chat with the child, decide what's appropriate, decide what you both agree on, and make a rule. You both have to agree on it. Get the child to sign something and you sign something once you've sort of had that discussion, debate, had it out, and then agreed. That is written down. That'll be the rule and boundary, and be consistent with it. It wouldn't be fair, on the other hand, just if you dictated to the child how much time was allowed on social media or the iPad, for example, because the child never agreed, they weren't involved in that conversation. So it always gives the child a sense of agency to be involved in the conversation. And then they're more likely to adhere and respect it because they had input. So open conversations can help prevent the child playing one parent off against the other, or grandparents off against parents, for example. And the key here is to get everyone involved together and have open conversations. So, like, bring the elephant in the room to the table. Don't be scared. Confront it head on. There's no room for lies or deceitful behaviors when everyone is openly involved in discussions. Secrets only operate behind closed doors, and secrets are a heavy burden for a child to carry. Good ways to do this, for example, is sort of casually having during meals around the table, Sunday dinner, when sort of all the family members are together, perhaps, or during walks outdoors, like I mentioned before, sort of walking along casually, asking the child, allowing the child's conversation to flow naturally, and the child feels more free and open to communicate rather than purposely being sat and asked to answer questions when they'd feel like they're being interrogated. In which case they're more likely to clamp up and have nothing to say. So shared experience is a valuable tool, which is underrated and underused. It's also helpful to children and adults to gain comfort in the shared experience. So that only when talked about, it comes the realization that others too have been through a similar experience, good or bad. So, for example, a child might be being bullied or have a fell out with a friend. And as a parent or caregiver, teacher, it's okay to say, oh, yes, I understand. I felt upset when I fell out with my friend, and so on. But obviously at an age appropriate level. And get children involved, encourage them to tell their story. We all have one. For example, group work, you can stories from books is a good place for a talking point to encourage discussions around morals and emotions and empathy. So you can sort of tell the story and ask questions about the characters. What did the child think the character was feeling? Did they think that was right? What they did, how they behaved. And an important point, an important takeaway is children need to know that they're not alone in this world, that there is not something wrong with them. We're all very different, and we all need to be cherished for our own unique individual differences and celebrated for our own strengths and weaknesses, whatever they may be. So I'm aware of the time, so we'll just quickly skip over this one. Fun, enjoyable ways you can think of to help children engage in mental well-being. I'll not ask you to fill it in. Some of the answers are playing games, walking outdoors. We've touched on some of these things already. Watching videos, providing examples of other children practicing mental well-being. That's good because children learn by watching others, and it has more sort of power if the person they're watching is a child of a similar age or a person of a similar age. Sticky dots is reminders to do certain behaviors, such as a sticky dot, or maybe it's on the iPad. It reminds them they've got to brush their teeth before bed, for example. Sticky faces are to monitor moods, perhaps if the child's struggling with mood, like keep a record, smiley face, sad face, straight face, maybe is on a daily chart. Popping things on the fridge is often a really good way to remember what needs to be done. It's good for putting routines and schedules on there as well. So skills, self-soothing, where the child learns to regulate their own emotions and intensity. Mindfulness is a really important one, which is about being present in the moment and focusing on the here and now, not worrying about the past. Because when people and children worry about the past, their attention isn't in the moment, it's in the past. This is what leads to depression, or like a catalyst for depression. Or worrying about the future hasn't happened yet. That creates anxiety if you're worrying about what may or may not happen. So we only have now. We only have this moment when I'm speaking. Like what I said a couple of seconds ago is gone. So it's a waste of energy worrying about the past, what mistakes have gone on, or worrying about the future, what may or may not be the outcome. And a good starting point to help children engage in this is a shower exercise. So get the child when they're in the shower to really think about how it feels. Just think about the feeling of the water on the skin, the temperature of the water, hot or cold, the smell of the soap. These things really help the child become fully present in the shower experience of the feeling of the water on the skin, the smell of the soap. And then if they have worrying thoughts of whatever's going on inside of the head, that's okay, allow that, but remind them to come back to think about smelling the soap and thinking about how the water feels like flowing off them. That's just it's a good example for adults as well. That's a good starting point to get people just to switch off and really focus on the moment. Deep breathing. This is a really good tool to help anxiety. It's very effective, and I've used it with people who have panic attacks. So I'm aware of the time. I'll quickly fly through these. But if you put one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach, and if you take a deep diaphragmatic breath in, the hand on your stomach should push out, whereas the hand on your chest won't move. So by doing diaphragmatic breathing, it draws the oxygen right to the bottom of your chest cavity, which then opens up the chest space for the heart to pump the same amount of volume around the body, but with slower heartbeats. So what happens is the heart rate slows down, which slows the breathing rate down, which then helps stop the anxiety. So as well as put as your hand on your stomach and hand on your chest when you're first practicing this. And when you breathe in for 4, and you push your stomach out, almost trying to make yourself look pregnant. And then when you're breathing out, you exhale for 8, and then that goes the opposite way. It's almost like you're trying to create a beach body. Relaxation, and children likes to relax, and there's 2 different types. There's passive relaxation and there's active relaxation. And there's a good tool for that. It's called progressive muscular relaxation, where you tense and then relax your muscles. You go through the body with that. And it helps to show this is what tension feels like. And then this is what relaxation feels like. And this is also good for adults to do as well, because often if people are carrying excessive amounts of tension in shoulders and arms and jaws and so on, if just by doing this, you can do it yourself when you're sat there now, hold it for like 15 to 30 seconds, tight. The more tighter you are, the more release you get when you relax. It's just to help and release tension from your body throughout the day, rather than it building up to the point where, if you imagine a pan of boiling water on the stove, it just comes to a point with all this tension, all this anxiety, not being present in the moment, worrying about the past, worrying about the future, the pan starts to bubble over, and then you've got a problem. So it's about being proactive in monitoring and managing all these things that are happening within your body, and sort of almost like a pressure cooker lets the air out before it blows. I'll quickly skip through the rest of these because I realize we're on past. I'll mention this one because this one's quite important. The life skills, as well as the emotional side that we've been talking about, also involve the practical side. So things like knowing how to turn the shower on, how to turn the washer on, knowing how to wash the dishes. You might laugh, but I can give you an example from my son. When he was around 17, he said he was going around to his friend's house and he started laughing. I said, "What's wrong?" He's like, "Well, my friend's parents have gone on holiday and he doesn't know how to turn the shower on." So my son went round to show him, and then he went round later on or sometime that week to show him how to use the washer. But all of these life skills are what helps a child feel confident in their daily environment, confident to actually be able to do things. A common one is people often say, "I wish I learned finances at school and cooking." And in the house, you can try and get your child to engage in cooking, which is easier said than done, because I used to try with my son and used to contribute to many things, but cooking wasn't one of them. But I did used to try and get them to understand and appreciate the value of money, because I would ask them to cut the grass and do jobs like that. And I'll say, "Well, I'll pay you for doing the jobs," rather than just giving them pocket money, because I wanted them to understand that you've got to earn your money. It's not just given. No one just gives you money. But everyone's got their own way of doing things and have their own values as well. But I do think it's a good way to help children understand the value of money. And it also helps out around the house. Obviously, I was on my own. It did help. Keeping rooms tidy is another good one, because as adults, we often go into child's room. Like, I've got a lot of clients who'll say, "I go into my child's room, it's upside down, it's a mess, it's stressing me out, there's pizza everywhere, food plates, and so on." So I'd advise having a conversation about the rules and boundaries and agreement about being responsible for their own space. And so that's another example of a boundary. It's about being consistent, but also giving them responsibility for their own agency for what is theirs within their space. And this helps to the child build confidence, increase autonomy and independence, provides a self-trust and responsibility within themselves, and prepares the child for becoming a young adult. It facilitates good decision making, weighing up the pros and cons. This is something, obviously, as an adult, they have to do all of the time. And if they've had an opportunity to do it as a child, they're sort of in a better place to do so as an adult, and an opportunity to learn from mistakes. Whereas if a child is being brought up in a more pampered or more controlled environment, they can often lack these skills. And then, poof, come 16, 18, they're spat out into the big wide world and they lack the skills and they find themselves making poor choices, getting into trouble, not knowing where or who they are in the world, going along with what others think, others' ideas, not having confidence in themselves to say, "No, I don't want to smoke. No, I don't want to drink. No, I don't want to take drugs." Instead, they go along because they don't really know who they are or what they want. So if you can try and help them facilitate their boundaries, their self-care, you are setting them in a good stead for a healthy future. So over pampering and over protecting the child or young person is not allowing them the opportunity to develop and learn life skills. So just to quickly summarize, a holistic approach is needed as there are many factors contributing to children's mental well-being. As with adult mental well-being, talking is a valuable tool. Active listening is important as it helps the child feel seen and heard and understood, and therefore valued as an individual. Consistency, I know I've kept going on about it, is key when it comes to boundaries and rules, which in turn help build feelings of trust and safety. So providing a secure base from which the child feels safe and confident to explore the world. Paying attention to the child's needs, wants, and desires. It is our role as parents and teachers to facilitate children's understanding of mental well-being in order to further the development of children's emotional intelligence and resilience, so that they are better equipped to enjoy life and overcome life stresses and adversity if and when necessary. So keynotes from today are: children need to know that they're not alone in this world, that there's not something wrong with them. We are all different and we all need to be cherished for our unique individual differences. Celebrated for our strengths and weaknesses, whatever they may be. Making mistakes is a natural and an unavoidable part of the process and a necessary function for development. Teach children to learn to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, rather than encouraging them to stay within their comfort zones, as this is where the true personal growth happens. Being non-judgmental facilitates open and honest communication for the child and young person. As safety is paramount while they are finding their feet and exploring the world, discovering who they are as individuals, all the while making mistakes along the way, exploring drink, drugs, smoking, sexuality, etc. So, for example, it's far better to have your child call up drunk and ask for a lift rather than be worried that you will judge them for their behavior, and as a result of that, put themselves at risk by walking home drunk. So parenting is a process of letting go. It's a parent's role to help children grow and develop into strong, resilient, independent, and self-assured adults, so that the world really is their oyster. So we're coming to the end of today's webinar. Apologies for running over. I have the Slido. It's the last one. So if you have any questions, please use this opportunity to ask some questions. I see, yeah, just ignore the ones that are already on there. Are you able to use the Slido? There's no questions coming through, so I'll stop the screen share and I'll come back to you. So I hope that webinar was useful for you and you were able to get something from it. But if you have any questions, you can ask me now. Someone's asked, what would be the appropriate approach when a child is behaving aggressive and refusing accepting a no as an answer? That is a tricky question, but again, if a child is behaving aggressive, it would depend on the level of aggression. Like I've said before, anything like this, I advise to go and see the GP for more appropriate help and advice, because I don't know the level of aggression. There might be something more going on. But in terms of refusing and accepting no as an answer, that is common with children. And then it would depend on how consistent the rules, the boundaries have been enforced, and is the child just constantly saying no? Because obviously with aggression and saying no, it's like a bit like a challenge in authority, perhaps. So maybe this is something that needs to be mentioned to the GP, and then they can look into it further that way if it's been an ongoing issue. No questions, but thank you very much. Thank you. Right, if that's all, if nobody has any more questions, just don't forget to drop me an email if you would like a PDF of the webinar. Thanks, guys. Bye.